So there you go. You're all bright and cheerful for Saturday night. Goodness me, I mean, you're here to hear some bloke speak on tax asset protection. I mean, what would your mates say? I mean, think about it seriously. I mean, if you're coming to... There's a few funny people here. By the way, before I continue, who's Team 7? Okay, 7's my favourite number. Give him a point, please. Who's Team 2? I hate number 2. Give him off a point. Yeah, so there you go. I mean, seriously. I mean, you're here to hear tax and asset protection and all that sort of stuff tonight. I reckon if you told your friends what you're doing, they'd think you're absolutely nuts. Would you agree? But then again, who's going to make some money this weekend? Who's going to be laughing in 5 years' time? Yes. We are, right? So are we out here listening to speakers like me drone on and on and on until midnight, and we go ahead and make some money? Is it worth it? Yes. Are we excited? Yes. Oh, fantastic. You're wide awake for Saturday night. Okay, so what I'm here to do tonight is to make you scumbag proof. Scumbag proof for the parents, that includes your children. Sorry, I've got 4 children, so I can get away with making a naughty comment like that. And also about keeping the tax man far from your assets. He wants to pay no tax. I can't do that, unfortunately, but I can certainly help you reduce your tax. Unless, of course, you're over 60. Who's over 60? I can help you pay no tax. That sound good? Right. Yes. Okay. So who am I? Well, a good-looking man there. I'm actually better looking in the flesh, aren't I, than on the photo? Well, as was put out by Megan before, I've worked for the ATO for 10 years, and I've been basically working in law and accounting now for another 10 years. So there you go. Here's my family, just to introduce them to you. That's my lovely wife, Grace. Isn't she gorgeous? Almost as good-looking as me. That's my oldest son, William. Got his father's good looks as well. That's my twins, James and Edward. And Josiah, my youngest, who everyone reckons looks a spitting image of me. I had some fun the other day. One of my junior secretaries, she absolutely loves this one especially, and because every Thursday he comes to the office because we've got no babysitter, and he just sits there all day and works, and he of course, no, she sits there and plays toys all day, and sits with her. And she kept going, he is so cute, he's the most gorgeous looking boy, what a heartbreaker. And I said, he looks a lot like me, doesn't she? She goes, oh, totally. So I said, oh, you think I'm cute and a heartbreaker too, do you? She went bright red. So there you go. You can have some fun. Joel Bauer actually says this with speakers to gain credibility. It's a great thing to show your family. He says, even if you don't have a family, make one up. So this could be my family, it may not be, but hopefully the resemblance will show you it actually is. So there you go. Okay, a little bit more about myself. Lawyer, accountant, financial planner, 10 years experience at the ATO and in private practice. And I've been in the wealth creation industry and speaking at these kind of seminars now for some time. So, as well as the fact that I love the law of attraction and mindset. Who's into all this kind of stuff? Who believes you can create your future? Tell you what, I've learnt that one. Unfortunately, you can create your future the good way and the bad way. And Anthony Robbins actually says that every single person financially and personally is right where they wanted to be. Interesting thought, isn't it? Everyone, he says, right now is where you actually have created where you want to be, whether consciously or subconsciously, where you're at today is where you want to be. So if you want to make a change, what do we have to do? Change our program, that's right. If we keep doing the same things that we were doing yesterday, what are we going to get today? The same results. So we've got to make changes. We've got to change our thinking. We've got to change our thinking on stuff that we don't like, that's boring, all that kind of stuff. Who here hates doing stuff that's boring? I think we all would put a hand up. But who knows that life is about doing things at times we'd rather not be doing, correct? That's right. One of the things about success and about doing things is there's times we're going to do things we actually don't want to be doing. And the key is to make it fun and understand the value and the benefit of what we're doing. I mean, tax and sorting out your paperwork isn't always the most exciting things. Anyone here more creative bent like me and hates paperwork? Anyone? Yeah, a few of us. Yeah, I actually don't like paperwork myself. I can't stand it. Even though I'm an accountant, I actually don't like it. And it's something I've had to discipline myself to do over the years. And the more I've done it, the better results I get. So really it's about creating our future, but as much as in creating our future, it's getting action as well, actually doing something about it. So, why should you trust me? Because I'm a lawyer. I'm a used car salesman, I'm a lawyer, and insurance salesman. Not quite. No, look, one of the things about tax and about building wealth is law. Now, who believes that or knows we've got a lot of law in Australia right now we've got to follow? Lots of law? Who here knows every one of the laws in the land right now? If you are, your name is God, please come out the front. They reckon that 1 million new pieces of law passes every year. 1 million. Now, I don't know them all, no one does, but the key is to getting ahead in the game is law. Who's played Monopoly here? Or cash flow game? Yeah, all of us. There's rules to the game, which by following the rules, we can win or be successful, correct? Likewise, it's about learning the rules of how the business and financial game actually works. And a lot of us go into a game not knowing the rules, expecting to win, and if we do win, it's by sheer fluke. I mean, I remember the first time I played Monopoly and won, it was a sheer fluke. It's a complete fluke. And sometimes we get success in life by sheer fluke. But really, we want to be getting success by planned action, correct? Why? Because if we lose what we've got, we can get it back again. Correct? So, law is critical. Understanding the laws in which we govern and operate in is absolutely critical to building wealth. Because getting that structure wrong, putting the wrong name on a contract, that can be the thing that costs you a lot of money and gets you into trouble, and suddenly, just like that, all your assets that you've worked hard for and you built up over the years is gone. Who here, for example, right now has got one or more properties? Quite a lot of us? Yeah, a few of us? Okay. Who here knows, put your hand up if you know you've got it fully protected right now? 100% protected. Very few. So the rest of you right now are uninsured. Your wealth is uninsured. Who here's got car insurance? Okay. Who here's got a car and has no car insurance? There's a few. More than normal, but about 4 or 5. So basically, you've chosen to hope you don't have a crash, correct? Yeah, hoping the heck you don't have one, because if you do, you're in trouble. Interesting, though, only a few hands went up for that one, but most hands are insured. Why? Why do we have car insurance? Anyone want to say? Peace of mind. Peace of mind for what? Yep. Spot on. What's your name? Jake. Thanks, Jake. Yeah, so in other words, to make sure that if we crash the car and we lose and we suddenly have to pay 50 grand to buy a new car, we don't have to pull the money out of thin air, correct? So likewise, though, interesting that when I asked about the question of who's insured your wealth, your net worth, very few hands went up, which means most of you have not. So in other words, most of us here today, our financial future and our livelihood is at risk, our family is at risk, but we haven't actually insured anything about it. So and why? Anyone want to have a guess why? Ignorance? Perfect. Good answer. Ignorance, we don't know. We're all told get car insurance, but we never hear get your assets insured. And sadly enough, when we go to our accountant, the accountant generally says, oh, don't worry about that now, I'll worry about it later on. Anyone actually had the accountant say that to them? Don't worry about it now, do it later on? Anyone? Normally there's a few. That's for me, I'm not here right now. Okay, so a lawyer. So one of the things of law is a fascinating and fantastic thing to know. One of the things I use law regularly is to get out of speeding fines, parking fines, voting fines. And guess what? I haven't done a census since 1996. Who thinks that's cool? By using a legal trick. The last 2 or 3 elections I have not voted because literally I haven't been around to vote. They've tried to find me and I get out of it every time. Who thinks that's sexy? My last parking fine or speeding fine I got out of, my parking fine which I got out of was my favourite. I actually wrote to them challenging their jurisdiction to give me a fine. Because this is my argument. I said, well, hang on a sec. It's a city for parking. I don't live in the city, so therefore Because I don't live in the city, then how can you find me? Because I basically live out in the suburbs. So if I drive and park there, you've got no jurisdiction over me. It's like me, someone trying to find me and claim, that, like say in France, and saying I live there, but I don't. And actually let me off the fine. So hasn't worked every time, but it worked that time. Got a speeding fine because what happened was I was driving my wife's car, and of course, well, I think I was. I don't claim that I was. And the picture came back, and of course, she got a fine, said, what's this about? We wrote to the cops for a photo. The photo came back, and of course, what I did was I got the cops to admit it was a male driver. So therefore, I wrote back as a lawyer on behalf of my wife saying, well, I'm not a male, therefore get rid of the fine. They wrote back and said, well, you've got to identify the driver by law. So she wrote back saying, well, it could be one of any three males, my husband, this guy, or this guy. All of them deny it, go take it up with him. And that was the end of the fine. Who thinks I'm really sexy now? I hope that wolf whistle wasn't from a guy. So law is great. I love it. When I was 13, I used to be a nerdy guy and just read law books. Actually, I always found law really fascinating. So there you go. Why else you trust me? Because I'm a number cruncher, one of those nerdy accountants who just sits there and crunches numbers. No, seriously, accounting and knowing numbers is all about building wealth. Because it's about dollars, money going in, money going out, and managing that, correct? So accounting is about the tax and knowing your tax liabilities, working all that out to make sure that you're getting ahead, not falling behind. Because many people are making money, but at the end of the year have got less money than they started with. And I've actually also a financial planner, not that I ever do much about it, but I got the qualification because I've got no life. So there you go. Okay, so what are we covering today? Look, we're going to be covering asset protection, which is about how to protect your assets, minimising your tax, and super. So 3 topics. Asset protection, minimising your tax, and super. So, okay, say it with me. What are we covering? Asset protection, taxation, superannuation. That's good. We're not falling asleep yet. So, the problem we've got in Australia is too much tax. Anyone disagree? 69%, as I'll show you shortly, we pay on average if you take all taxes into account. Is that severe? Too much tax. And a legitimate fear of losing assets. I mentioned about not insuring your net worth. The fact is, if your net worth is not insured, you should be nervous, seriously. Because people don't realise, and I must admit, the last 3 months, I've actually had a greater appreciation of what I'm teaching you in my own personal life. Some of the things which I've said and I've taught more by knowing the law and helping people, I've actually experienced some of it in my own life. And to be frank, it's been a darn tough last 3 months for me. And the fact that I've had my own assets fairly well shielded has certainly helped me in terms of peace of mind. One of the things that I've actually mentioned in previous seminars is about the fact you can be sued as an employee. Now, I actually got a lawsuit lodged against me 6 weeks ago from when I used to work 7 years ago for a firm. Totally seriously. Now, the work was done by me working for the firm, and the work was actually, fortunately, that job, I did that immaculately. My file notes were so good, the insurer is applying for what's called a strikeout, which means to get the lawsuit struck out without even being heard because there's no merit in the case. But basically, she's personally lodged a lawsuit against me because what happened was, to make it simple, was she came to me for tax advice. The thing that got me nervous at the time 7 years ago was it was a big family court dispute involving her. And I made a very clear disclaimer in the advice saying that we don't do family law or practice in family law. She's basically sued me for not advising on the family law repercussions of my advice. Not just the firm, but she personally lodged a lawsuit against me. Now, fortunately, I was so well covered off. The insurer's lawyers said she's got no chance, if there's no issue, and I was covered by PI insurance anyway. But if, for example, if my advice had not been strictly according to my employer's rules, the PI insurer wouldn't have covered me. And the first thing they checked before they said they'd cover me was whether I'd actually followed my employer's certain protocols and whether the advice had been done and I wasn't outside the terms of the policy. Unfortunately, I was in the policy. But if I hadn't been, guess what? Guess who would have been footing the legal bills and all the bills if something had gone wrong? Imagine if that had been a file which for some reason I just missed my normal attention to detail and I made a mistake. Do we all make mistakes? Imagine if that had happened. It had been the one file which I'd made a mistake. Let's say I had a perfect week or year and I made one mistake, and that was the one file they happened to pick. Guess what? Just like that, I've suddenly got 2 years or 3 years of stress ahead of me, and a lawsuit and a lot of financial stuff on my hand. So the short answer is, can you be sued as an employee? Oh yes. Because the first thing I actually said to my insurer, I said, well, that's fine because I've actually covered all the things off the employee. But he said, it doesn't actually matter, because if the advice is wrong, you could still be liable even if you followed your employer's direction on the matter. Who's shocked by that? So even if you followed your employer's advice on the matter, you can be liable. So understand that if you've got assets, like you've got houses, if you've got things in your own name and you're employed and you're dealing with the public, you can be sued. The Horton versus Arns High Court case makes it very clear, where a web designer gave advice, who was employed by a company, gave advice to a particular client. The client, it was very important to the client that they had what was called secured credit card facilities or whatever online. He assured them they would get that. It turned out that he was wrong. They couldn't get that. The employer then went bankrupt, so the person couldn't sue the employer, so they sued the web designer personally and won. It's called a common law duty of care. So understand this, that as an employee you are at risk. In business you are even more at risk. Because in business your duty of care is especially high, and often PI may or may not cover what your lawsuit. Okay? So the fear of losing assets is a legitimate fear. And although we don't live our life by fear, we need to be aware of what things can go wrong. The fact is, in life, as much as I'm a big believer in the law of attraction, I live that, I don't walk around as a doom and gloomer, the fact is things can go wrong, agree? Things can happen. We get calamity strikes when you least expect it. Who's ever knew in advance they're going to have a car accident? Anyone? Anyone know for sure that they're going to be getting cancer soon? No, I mean, seriously, we've got no idea, do we? If it comes out of left field. Now, the key is, as much as we can, we be forearmed, because to be forearmed is to be forewarned, and we can deal and we can plan. So really what I'm here to teach you is really to be grounded in what you're doing. And this weekend, as you're going to start, as you're building wealth, or if you've already got wealth, if you're going to increase your wealth with the strategies in stocks and property, internet marketing you'll learn this weekend, but you're also showing wisdom and you're actually building a solid groundwork in what you're doing to make sure that, one, the tax man doesn't walk in and pilfer your assets. Two, but you're not going to suddenly find that a lawsuit or something going wrong can cost you your whole net worth or a significant portion of it. I can remember about 4 years ago a client seeing me, and here's a classic example of what I was saying. He was a financial planner or investment advisor. He'd been investment advisor for 25 years. He built up a net worth of $3 million by working 60 hours a week. He was about 5 years away from retirement. The way financial planning works is you must follow what's called the dealer group's investment list that the insurer approves. Otherwise, the PI insurer won't cover you. Although he usually did that, there was one particular offshore investment that was returning about 25% per annum on average and had been for about 10, 15 years. He was telling his clients to go and, he said, look, here's my official investment recommendations. Unofficially, put some money into this one. A whole lot of his clients put money in there, and then after 15 years, the investment went south and lost all the money. The result of it was he came to me because a number of the investors were talking about a class action against him for the loss of their money. The problem is his PI insurer going to cover him? No. Now, I remember the look on his wife's face, especially when they walked in. The look of stress and haggard on her eyes and fear, just about the fact that suddenly their retirement was going to be gone, or at serious risk, was causing a major strain on her. Now, let me ask you something, a bit of honesty here. Who here, if you suddenly realise that your last 20 years of hard work was about to go down the drain, it would cause you significant stress? Put your hand up. Yeah, especially retirees. If it's going to cause you suddenly to threaten your retirement, put your hand up if that will cause you immense stress. Yeah, pretty much most of us, if we're not, our name's probably God. Because It's because stress and worry and fear is unfortunately something that we all face. The fear of losing assets and the reality of stress. Now, the sad thing was although we managed to do something for him, 6 months later their marriage separated because she couldn't handle the stress and they basically started fighting all the time. And unfortunately, money does it to you. What's the biggest cause of marriage breakups in Australia today according to stats? Money. Anyone here ever fight with their partners over money? Yeah, I do. I mean, money is one of the biggest things that causes stress and causes relationship breakdown. So, right now, don't just think of me as an asset protection and tax advisor, think of me as your marriage counsellor today. Call me Dr. Warren. Now, in all seriousness, this stuff can save you money and can also save you stress and save your relationship, give you peace of mind. What happens to your creative energy and your ability to think outside the box when you're in stress? Does it go right down? Absolutely. So you want to quarantine and preserve your creative energy and your ability to think when you're in situations and make money. So when you've got yourself protected and covered, it makes your life a lot easier, believe me. And I can tell you now, as I said, I haven't had the best 3 months. There's been a few other things that have been happening. And again, it's when you manage things and you plan in advance, it does make things a lot easier. Fail solution is really blindly what I call trusting your accountant. I mean, all of you are here this weekend because you've stopped blindly trusting your financial advisors. Agreed? You suddenly worked out, like we've worked out, but hang on a sec, my financial advisor is not going to be the answer to my retirement and me building wealth. Agreed? I've got to take some accountability and responsibility to actually grow some wealth and build my wealth because I can't just trust in my financial advisor. And we saw that in the stock market crash. I mean, suddenly all the wealth we built up from managed funds in the boom, who here saw their superannuation or share portfolio plummet? Yeah, a lot of us. So blindly trusting your accountant is the same. Unfortunately, accountants don't always give the best advice. And remember something, an accountant's job is to cut costs. Okay? That's their primary job. So when you're setting up a new business venture or shares, what's your accountant like you to do? Is he likely to tell you to structure yourself and spend money on structuring or cut your costs? Cut your costs. So the biggest problem is accountants don't always actually help you to get where you're going. And I'll say it like any profession, you know.